So as you can see, today we're talking about inverses. And inverses are a concept that are going to be pretty standard throughout this year. With a lot of our different functions, we're going to be talking quite a bit about inverses. So I've got these two functions, f of x and g of x. And, sorry, f of x and g of x. And they're just random functions. Okay? F of x has points. I moved it a little, didn't I? There we go. When it zoomed in, it didn't work. Okay, so f of x has points 0, 1, 1, 2, and 4, 3. So let's go ahead and fill in that table. 0, 1, 1, 2, 4, 3. Okay. Then let's look at our g of x. Let's look at our points. What do we have here? 1, 0, 2, 1, and 3, 4. Okay, so if you compare f of x and g of x, what do we notice? What do you mean by backwards? They're flipped. Good. F of x and g of x have flipped x and y values. You see those? Okay, so that's one thing we notice. We've got flipped x and y values. What about graphically? What do you notice graphically?
So like, I forget the word, but they're kind of like backwards can be weird.
Okay, I think you're on the right track. Take a look. What do you think? How do you think graphically I could have gotten from f of x to g of x?
I reflected it.
Good, I reflected it over what you think. Yeah. X. So that means this point right here that they share has to be on the line y equals x, right? So it hasn't changed. So yeah, this is the line y equals x. And while my drawing is not perfect, hopefully you can kind of visualize that if you folded over that line, you would be able to match up. Okay, so that's another way to talk about inverses, is a reflection over the line y equals x. So also I want you to notice with flipped x and y values, do you see that your domain and your range also flip? So this function has a domain, f of x has a domain from 0 to 4, and g of x has a range from 0 to 4. F of x has a range of 1 to 3, g of x has a domain of 1 to 3. So with flipping those x and y values, you're also flipping your domains and ranges. Okay, so as you can imagine, f of x and g of x are inverses. Okay, the inverse of a graph is always a reflection across the line y equals x. You would always switch your x and your y values. And you can kind of call them functions that undo each other. And we'll talk about that tomorrow. Whoa. We'll talk about that Monday. We're going to talk about finding inverses 3 ways. If I give you a point, to find the inverse of that point, you simply switch the x and the y values. Okay? If I give you a graph, you can reflect that graph across line y equals x. And if I give you an equation, in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about the steps you take to come up with the new equation of the inverse. So let's talk about this set of points here. We have a set of points 0, -3, 3, 3, -3, 9, and 6, 9. Okay, looking at that original data set, take a second, write that down. Is that data set a function? Yes, I agree with you. Why? Okay, let's use better vocabulary. We don't know that from this. Instead of better repeating x values, what can we say?
The x values do not correspond. Is it correspond?
Correspond's a good word, yes.
Corresponds multiple times.
Good. There we go. Good teamwork there. The x values only correspond with one y. Each x, or every x value, only corresponds with one y value. Okay, if I asked you for the inverse of this function, what do you think we're going to do? In each point. Yep, that's all you do. Every year we try and make this harder than it is. Don't make it harder than it is. When you're asked for the inverse of a point, you just switch the locations. So, -3, 0. 3, 3. 9, -3. 9, 6. That is the inverse of that data. Is the inverse a function? Good. Why? Good. No, and you can say x equals 9 corresponds. You could say to -3 and 6, or you can simply say to more than one y. I'm going to go ahead and say I don't know why I wrote y equals x here. I meant right. Yes. Sorry. Hopefully y'all didn't copy that down.
I did.
Sorry. Ask me when I do weird stuff like that.
No, I didn't.
I was really confused by that.
Yeah, ask me when I do stuff like that. I'm just worried about pushing the air out so you guys can hear me.
You wrote the y and then you just like wrote y equals x.
All right. Everyone okay with the data set finding that inverse? If I give you a point and I ask you for the inverse of that point, what do? Switch x and y. Don't do anything with signs or values. Everyone tries to make it harder. Just switch those places. Okay? Okay. To find it happens. To find the inverse algebraically. Stay with me. To find an inverse algebraically, meaning I give you a function, you're going to follow these same 4 steps. These same 4 steps will be the same as we move through this entire year. Okay, so I'm giving you the function f of x is equal to 3x minus 1. F of x equals 3x minus 1. So the first thing I would recommend you do is change f of x to y. So I'm going to rewrite this as y equals 3x minus 1. Okay, So now that we have y and x, just like with our ordered pairs, we are going to switch that y and x. So I'm going to switch it and write it as x equals 3y minus 1. Literally just switch their locations. Then you solve for y. You solve to isolate y. So how would I do that here? Right, so add 1 to both sides. So I would get x plus 1 equals 3y. And then what would I do? Divide everything by 3. Again, like I showed you in the inverse, in the warm-up, you can put it all over 3, or you can divide each one by 3. So would you agree that that's going to give me 1/3 x plus 1/3 is equal to y? Okay, then we use this new notation. It's f with a -1 of x. And what that means is the inverse function of x, or f inverse of x instead of just f of x. And that's how we'll write our final answer. So we'll say f inverse of x is equal to 1/3 x. Questions on any of those steps? Alrighty, well, let's try some. Oh, sorry, I'm back. Sorry. All right. Let's practice. I would like to find the inverse of y equals 2x. So this is already in y equals, not f of x equals. So I don't need to change my f of x to y. So after I make sure f of x is changed to y, what's the first thing I do? Good. Switch x and y. So x equals 2y. Then what? Solve for y. And what would I do? Both sides by 2. So I would say y is equal to, you could say 1/2 x, or you could say x over 2. Either is fine. Now, technically, since it didn't start in function notation, you don't technically have to put it in function notation and leave it as f inverse of x, but you are not wrong because this is a function, okay? Y equals 1/2 x, that is a function, so it is okay to go ahead and say f inverse of x. But you wouldn't have been wrong there if you didn't. All right. Tell me what to do first on number 5. Okay, so y equals. Now, are you going to be able to start combining step 1 and step 2? Yeah. Switch f of x for y and then flip your x for y. You're going to get there after you keep working and working these, and that's totally fine. I don't have to see every single step. I do need to see steps. Okay, then what? Switch x and y's. X equals y over 3. Then what? Good. Solve for y. So I'd multiply each side by 3. I get that y equals 3x, which gives me what?
The inverse.
Inverse of
Good. You can say f inverse of x it's just a well practiced language in here, so I'll be correcting everyone, but just so we get better at that accurate language. Okay, try number 6, please. All right, check with your neighbor. All right, would you agree we get f of inverse of x equals x minus 2? Cool. Okay, now these were really straightforward, right? They're going to get a little more complicated over the next couple days, months, but it's nice to start with basics. So let's try number 7. Sorry, this says f of x equals negative 1/2 x minus 5. F of x equals negative 1/2 x minus 5. Okay, so I start by rewriting as y equals. So y equals negative 1/2 x minus 5. What do I do then? So x equals negative 1/2 y minus 5. Okay, now to solve for y. Okay. So x plus 5 equals negative 1/2 y. What would I do next? What's our goal? Our goal is to get y by itself, right? So what could I multiply everything by to be left with a positive y here? Good. Multiply everything by negative 2. So negative 2x minus 10 equals positive y. Okay, last step. Good. F inverse of x equals negative 2x minus 10. Now, some of the ones in 4, 5, and 6 you could kind of eyeball, right? If you just try and eyeball these, you're going to be less happy. Your results are going to not be as good. Right? Can you please work number 8 for me? start. What's step 1 here? Sorry, once you switch x and y, what's the first step for solving?
Multiply by 3.
Multiply by 3, good. So I get 3x equals 4y plus 2. Then what? Subtract 2. And then what? Everything divided by 4.
Usually 3x minus 2, just all that over 4.
So you could have 3x, 3/4 x minus 1/2 equals y.
That's the same thing.
Or you could have 3x minus 2 over 4 equals y. And then change to your F inverse notation. Okay. Let's look at number 9. To start, I would go ahead and rewrite as y equals, right? And then switch my x and y. Again, if you're doing that in one step, that's okay. It's really important, though, that you do show me you're switching x and y. Okay. There are 2 ways that you could start solving for y. What could you do? I wrote x twice. I do that a lot. Thank you. I appreciate this.
Only erasing is that easy?
Okay, what's one first step we could use? Okay, distribute 1/3. Okay, absolutely fine. What's another first step we could do?
Like multiply by 3.
Yeah, you can multiply both sides by 3. Either one is fine. Pick which step makes more sense to you, and go ahead and find your inverse. This is like All right, check your answer up here. Sure. Did you multiply by 3 first or distribute? Can do a little bit of both. Pick which one you'd like us to do, and I'll be happy to work it. Distribute? Okay. Guys, please be quiet. So I would have x equals 1/3 times 5 is 5/3. And 1/3 times negative 3y would just be negative y. Solving for y, so I would then subtract 5/3 from both sides. So I would get x minus 5/3 equals negative y. And I have to multiply everything by -1. So negative x plus 5/3 equals positive y.
And you got the same answer.
Okay, so those are inverses. Okay, your homework is out of your book tonight. Okay, so you'll do homework on your own page. I have copied the beginning of your homework assignment so that you can get started. Now, tell me, where do you find the numbers you are actually supposed to do?
What did you get?
On the timeline that I gave you a couple days ago. Dig that out. Your timeline is where you find the assignment for bookwork.